Let's get to the news. Okay, so this week we have a lot of Democrats behaving badly. Let's start with Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. So this past week, Mayor Muriel Bowser, she enacted a state of emergency over busloads of illegal aliens coming into her city from across the southern border. I thought this one was a good place to start. Just the context here is that Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, he's been, I believe since March of this year, he's been basically busing these illegal immigrants to U.S. sanctuary cities. He's trying to basically manage the wave of illegal aliens that are coming in from across the border. I believe the numbers in June were a whopping like 200,000+ who came across the southwestern border of the U.S., according to CBP, in that month alone. Okay. And I also believe that the numbers in D.C. are roughly about 10,000 total year to date who have been brought in via bus to D.C. So only a very, very small fraction, right? About 10,000 of, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not maybe millions at this point, since the start of the year. And this is an interesting place to start because this is kind of like unraveling, if you would, kind of the double speak or the hypocrisy of sort of the Washington, D.C. establishment here. So you have this press conference. I believe this state of emergency was declared on Thursday. And you have the city council member saying, look, the governors of Texas and Arizona have created this crisis and turned us into a border town. Okay. And then you have down here, Muriel Bowser basically declaring a state of emergency or a public emergency over the arrivals in her city and basically saying, hey, I'm going to allocate $10 million to basically provide resources to these migrants. So this thing called the Office of Migrant Services is going to help with meals and transportation and housing and all that stuff, right? And then they're going to seek reimbursement for that $10 million from the federal government. And then Muriel Bowser actually goes further. She basically partially blames the response to this sort of migration crisis on the Biden administration, which is kind of a step that I didn't expect with this one. And to be clear, she does not seem to be blaming the Biden administration as the cause of the crisis, even though that's true, due to their unwillingness and basically refusal to enforce the border. But she seems to be blaming the Biden administration for the response to it, meaning, hey, we need resources, we need federal zones, we need help to basically manage this sort of humanitarian crisis that's been unfolding this year. And so it's this seems to be kind of her moment of testing. The thing about it that makes it interesting is that DC is a sanctuary city, one of several Democratic sanctuary cities in the country. So what they're basically saying is, hey, come one, come all. We are a welcoming, diverse community. We value immigrants. We're not going to black label you, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what she was driving home, according to this opinion article from Washington Post back in 2018, right? And very much taking, let's say, a hostile view to the Trump administration's policies, right? We are not a country of fear and cruelty, she says. And now when she has to put her money where her mouth is, things have changed. The tune in the story seems to have changed. And what's interesting here is that her sort of partner in crime here, if you would, this councilwoman who kind of is helping her to manage this crisis. What is her name here? Brianne Nadeau, I guess. She had a completely different tune back in 2019, right? And so check this out. She's saying in 2019, when ICE tried to enforce federal immigration law, Nadeau said, quote, "The district is a sanctuary city, which means our law enforcement does not cooperate with ICE. The Metropolitan Police Department's policy is that it will not enforce civil immigration laws, which only create a strong divide between the police and community members. MPD officers are also prohibited from asking about residency and immigration status." Okay? She even went so far as to call for the abolition of ICE and wrote DC's law to establish a permanent immigrant legal services fund. So did you catch all that? So, okay. So when the Trump administration is in charge, when the Republicans are in charge, federal government bad, immigrants good. Now the Biden administration comes in, and DC has to put its money where its mouth is, talking about it, how welcoming it is for communities and things of that nature. And now it's immigration bad and government good. We need government, more government, please, more involvement, federal officials. Please help us now. Please collaborate with us now, right? Because now they have to put their money where their mouth is. And so I will say I kind of like this whole approach by Governor Greg Abbott and Doug Ducey of Arizona. I think it's good. It's controversial. Not everybody will agree with me. That's okay. But my thinking is that if the Democrats are going to refuse to accept responsibility for creating this sort of immigration crisis, then if they're not going to accept responsibility on the front end for managing it, it's only right that they are forced to accept responsibility for it on the back end. So this is important. And then we have one more city here beyond DC that's feeling the pressure. Chicago is the second sort of sanctuary city where this has kind of been taken off and reaching new heights. And what's been happening recently is, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she's been, basically complaining about it, right? Throwing mean words around. But what's interesting is that they're not keeping these migrants in the city. They're actually busing them outside of the city to the Chicago suburbs. So there's a village, I guess, called Burr Ridge. So they got like 64 refugees on Wednesday, which were transported from the Salvation Army Shield of Hope in Chicago. And then they were ultimately assigned to temporary hotel housing in Burr Ridge. So, just think about the hypocrisy there, right? Instead of allocating additional resources like DC, they kind of go a different route. They say, we want these people out of our city and we're going to throw them into some suburb, and then poorly communicate. So like the mayor of, Burr Ridge, Gary Grasso, he's like, look, we haven't gotten clear communications from the county, from Cook County, or from Chicago, or from these governors who are busting it in. We're just kind of at a loss here, just kind of reacting to the situation. So really, really interesting kind of take on the situation. It's been happening for months, this whole situation, but it's finally reaching kind of a crescendo here in terms of getting people's attention and kind of getting some more press and coverage. So ultimately, I'm going to move this one to an A tier. And then speaking of Chicago and Cook County, we have some really interesting developments out of Illinois recently. So here we have from Breitbart, Illinois Democrats bail abolishment to free suspects charged with murder, kidnapping, and burglary. The gates are open. So for some background to this, so as part of there's this thing called the Safety Act that was passed, I guess, in 2020 or 21, one of those two. The state legislature basically passed it kind of under the radar, right? Almost behind closed doors. They used some sort of procedural loopholes to get it done in the legislature, and then it was signed into law by the governor. So it is in effect going to become a law, or basically is already. But there's certain parts of the law that kick in January of 2023. So coming up in a couple months here. And this is a hell of a law. It's getting a lot of controversy and scrutiny right now because it basically just gives criminals free reign in the entire state. It's turning the state of Illinois into effectively Chicago. So every weekend in Chicago, you have gun violence. Dozens of people are shot, many killed, and nobody blinks an eye because it's Chicago. It's kind of doing the same thing and taking that Chicago mindset and applying it not just in Cook County, but to the entirety of the state, which is extraordinary. So let's just read through this a little bit. So beginning 2023 in January, Illinois will become the first state in the nation to have eliminated cash bail, even for some of the most violent crimes. And as a result, local district attorneys say they will be forced to free thousands of suspects accused of crimes like murder. Yes, murder and kidnapping. And then in just one county, Winnebago County alone, the district attorney says that about 400 charged criminals will be freed from jail despite their being accused of violent crimes. And then likewise, in a different county, 640 charged criminals will be freed from jail, including 60 who are accused of murder. So the list of crimes or violent crimes for which bail will be abolished starting in that time are going to include second-degree murder, drug-induced homicide, kidnapping, robbery, burglary, aggravated battery, nearly all drug offenses, including like fentanyl ones, which are pretty popular right now, aggravated DUI, aggravated fleeing, arson, intimidation, threatening public officials. So anyone sitting in jail right now with these charges pending are going to be let out, says a Johnson County, Illinois sheriff. The gates are open. They're going to be let out onto the streets. It sounds like some Mad Max level chaos is about to take place and go down in Illinois right now. And one of the things that's interesting about this one is that so whenever I see both Democrats and Republicans getting mad about something, that's when I know it's serious. Like with the whole FBI raid, you had some Democrats and Republicans both saying, "Whoa, this is a big deal, right?" Of Trump's home. This is kind of like another one of those situations, albeit at a lesser scale, right? So you have a district attorney, Jim Glasgow. He's a Democrat. He's saying it will destroy the state of Illinois. So big stuff. And then Winnebago County, this DA is Republican Jay Hanley. Under the new law, he would be forced to free domestic abusers who ultimately murdered their wives. So part of the law is like the prosecutor would need to prove that the wife murderer basically is a danger or a threat to society. If they can't do that within 48 hours, the man can go. Crazy shit. I mean, it's just nightmare scenario. Okay. I mentioned that it eliminates cash bail. It also eliminates pre-trial detention for most crimes. So you commit a crime, usually you can be detained for a while. No longer the case here. And then it gets crazier, right? So there's this, an Illinois House candidate right now, Keith Picca. He kind of draws out some other scrutiny, right? So he says individuals on electronic monitoring must be in violation for 48 hours before law enforcement can act. So what that means is you're a criminal. They give you an ankle bracelet. You can literally hop in your car and make it all the way to like Alaska, he says, before the cops are able to legally act and try to get you back. Crazy. And then there's another thing that says officers will not be able to remove trespassers from your residence or business. So, you have someone robbing you at your home or robbing you at your business or just squatting, right? And refuse to leave. It is your property. It's your business. Officers can't remove that person or those persons. So this is like literal Mad Max territory. Very, very interesting. It sounds like, so from a solution standpoint, one of the DAs here, the one that I mentioned before, Jay Hanley, he kind of wrote a pretty interesting opinion piece. First is saying, look, more than half of our jail is going to be able to walk out the door come January 1st. But beyond that, he does actually highlight a potential solution with this. So we'll see. So down here at the bottom, he's like, well, look, first thing we got to do is we got to delay the effective date by at least 6 months so we can scrutinize and debate this, right? Outside of the shadow of a bygone legislative lame duck session, which is what they used to pass it in the legislature. And so that's the first thing that he's proposing here as a way to satisfy or fix the situation. And then secondly, he's saying, look, once this delay has been completed, we need to do this again. We need a do-over, please. So our legislature should start over. And then he's like, hey, maybe we can try to model New Jersey's 2017 move, which was similar to ours, to move to a cashless bail system, but basically more incrementally or maybe in a more balanced manner. So we'll see what happens to this one. Very, very interesting to watch. I'm surprised personally that it took so long to kind of get to this level of visibility, but I'm going to move this to S tier. Whenever you have these Democrat cities, like Chicago is notorious as being the most dangerous city in America, basically, if not one of the most dangerous in the whole country. So when you take the Chicago model and adopt it sort of at a national scale, as Illinois seems to be doing, and maybe others will follow, it's kind of a sign to things to come, right? Because if this doesn't get stopped, because the Democrats are like follow the leader and they want to like push each other to see who can be the most insane first. Very similar to like Democrat policy in California, right? Oh, we're the first mover, and then half a dozen states follow. That could happen here, depending on how things go. So we'll continue to monitor that one. All right, next up, we have to talk about a really sad situation that came up recently, which is the story of Eliza Fletcher. So suspect in Memphis jogger Eliza Fletcher's murder has a lengthy juvenile record, including rape and kidnapping. Basically, Memphis had one of the worst weeks it's ever had in modern history in terms of violent crime and murder and mayhem. It's been, speaking of Mad Max, very much like that. I guess Illinois wants to become a kind of a weekly version of what happened in Memphis last week, right? Can you imagine that happening every single week in the state of Illinois or kind of in Chicago suburbs? So anyway, the story here is this woman, Eliza Fletcher, she was just jogging, right? And she basically gets abducted and murdered, and I believe also sexually assaulted by a career criminal. And as I go to this story and the one that follows, because it's related, I want you to ask yourself what the common thread is amongst them. I'm going to save it till the end, but I want you to try to guess what the common thread is to these two stories, okay? So anyway, so she's jogging. She gets kidnapped, raped, and murdered, sadly and tragically. She was a wife. She was a mother. She was also a teacher. I think she taught like girls in like a Catholic school. She was also the heiress to like a big multi-billion dollar business empire, meaning she didn't need the money, but she decided to work anyway and to follow her heart and what she felt was her calling on this earth by helping and serving children, right? Very happy lady, very nice. She has some viral videos out there. And so this individual, Cleotha Abson, he's the one who snuffed out her light, sadly, in this world. And what's crazy is that 20 years ago, he was actually charged with a very similar situation. So he had actually kidnapped, somebody else, and basically, forced them to withdraw money from an ATM. So he seems to have a history, right, of kidnapping. So this is story number one. Story number two is the next day, basically, police arrested a Memphis man who live streamed shootings, killing 4 people, right? So he basically just decides that he wants to record himself committing a crime, turns on his camera or his phone or whatever, goes into an auto zone, other places, and just starts unloading on innocent people for no reason at all, by the way, no reason at all. Neither of these criminals seem to have done a robbery in this case. It's just pure evil, wanton violence with no actual motive or whatever the rationale for it. Just pure evil. And so this individual, his name is Ezekiel Kelly. And he's the one that is responsible for it. He just went on basically a crime spree. 3 shootings, 2 carjackings followed the initial incident. And then he was arrested without incident. So usually the left complains that, they are shoot first, ask questions later, the police are. And, it's so bad how they treat black people this way, and white people, they want to take them to Burger King and stuff like that. Not so the case with this person. He goes to jail. He has to deal with his charges in court. All right, so I finished describing these 2 stories. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to try to figure out what is the common thread here. And it's not going to be, they're both black males committing crimes against innocent people here. There's more to it than that. So from a public policy standpoint, what would you guess is the common thread? Okay, I'm going to stop there. So if you guessed that they both got out early due to lax Democrat policies, then you would be correct. So I'll just kind of break it down one by one here. So the Memphis shooting suspect was released from a 3-year prison sentence after just 11 months. So this guy, he committed a crime when he was 17. He got charged as an adult, and then they let him out after less than a year. Okay, so that's what's going on with this individual here. And then the other individual, Eliza Fletcher's murderer, Cleotha Abson, he was supposed to do a 24-year prison sentence. Okay, so for the whole kidnapping of a lawyer, a Memphis lawyer, and making him go to the ATM and get money and all that, he was supposed to do 24 years, but he got out in 2000. That's the answer. So, excuse me. Let me correct myself. He was arrested in 2000 and was supposed to do 24 years. He got out in 2020. That's what I meant to say. So he only served 20 of the 24 years of his sentencing before he was released. And then 2 years later, right, in 2022, he goes down for murdering this woman, this innocent woman. So who's responsible, right? What prosecutor, what judge, what police commissioner? I don't know how the system works, but who made the decision to let these individuals out of jail before their sentencing was complete, and on what basis was that? Right, that is the answer that or the question that needs to be answered. So ultimately, I'm going to move this one to an S tier as well. These were too high profile to be ignored, and I think really shook a lot of people to the core. And once again, they reveal the error and the problem with lax policies that give criminals a slap on the wrist. Right, you let out these two individuals before their sentencing is complete, and then you give them a pass to go out and commit further crime, and that results in a total of 5 people dead. So tragedy. Okay, so moving on, and I apologize. This is going to be a little bit of I think this is a morbid week, you might say. And they're raising funds for some of the victims here, right? One of them was this nice lady who she was a single mother, and now her children are orphaned. So they're trying to raise money for the shooting spree victim of the second individual, Ezekiel Kelly. So moving on. So there's one more related story here to this Memphis one. And this one is interesting because it's kind of a social contagion effect, which is that there were two teenagers, or I guess you might say young adults, 18 to 20, who basically went on to the internet and was like, hey, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to follow in the footsteps of Ezekiel Kelly, and we're going to find some white woman to, commit violence against. And as far as I know, these two individuals are still at large. Okay. And, I can guarantee you that they either have a record, given the trend that we just saw, they have a record of some sort, right? Either they have a record, or they got off early, or if they are arrested, they will get off early, right? Because the Democrats love to continue to do the same thing over and over. So we'll continue to kind of monitor the Memphis situation and the crime wave that's affecting this country. Okay, so real quick, Las Vegas, Nevada. So this one is kind of an interesting one. So I'll make this one a bit quicker. So for years, right, we've heard how Trump and the Republicans were basically a threat to journalism. And what we have here is an interesting situation where this kind of hotshot reporter named Jeff German, he has been uncovering big stories of scandal and recklessness and all the rest in Sin City in Las Vegas for 40 years. Okay, so he's done everything. Watchdog articles. Calling out mobsters, calling out crooked politicians, calling out casino titans, right? Anyone who misused wealth and power in the city. Calling out lavish spending, calling out sexual harassment, like calling out the Las Vegas Raiders football organization. I mean, he's been almost like a hero or a Robin Hood or a Batman or something when it comes to journalism. And unfortunately, he got the wrong one. There was a relatively smaller story for this Democrat councilman, I think, or county administrator, I think he was, named Robert Tellis, right? Who he wrote a story about that was basically just critical of him. He ends up losing his campaign. So I guess he wanted to get reelected. He was unsuccessful. He attributes that unsuccessful reelection campaign, at least in part, to this journalist, this Jeff German. He finds him, goes to his home, and stabs him to death. That's the story. It's crazy, right? So, we're hearing about, Donald Trump and the Republicans, they're a threat to journalism and the free press. Him calling the fake news is so bad. And then we have, in the real world, we have reporters like this. We have reporters like Project Veritas, right, who are being, raided by the FBI, hit pieces from their sort of rivals and competitors in the news industry, right? You have the mainstream media basically working as a lapdog for the Biden administration, right? Doing whatever they're told. I mean, you literally have like one legit news reporter, Peter Doocy from Fox News, asking real questions. Everybody else is just a lapdog. How can we serve the master, right? So, and now we have a Democrat here, a Democrat politician, first that I've heard, who directly carried out the murder of a news reporter, and this one was pretty silent, right? So I'm gonna move this one to B tier. I think if it was a more high-profile Democrat or a high-profile reporter, or if it was a Republican, I think it would have been higher on the ranking list because it would have gotten more press and more coverage, and more relevant for the culture war. But sadly, they kind of memory hold this one and kind of kept it under wraps to a sufficient degree. But good on the New York Times for actually kind of covering that. Anyway, all right, moving on to the last story. We got to talk about this lady named Krystle Matthews. Krystle Matthews. So, 2022 has been a heck of a year for this Krystle Matthews. So let me just describe what happened here. So leaked video reveals Black Democrat Senate candidates extreme racism, saying, quote, treat white people like shit. She compared white Americans to children and mocked politicians who say, quote, white shit. So she just can't keep her mouth shut. She just can't. She has no chill. So she told a Project Veritas reporter, white people like shit that makes them respect her more. So she's like, my district is slightly Republican. It's heavily white. I'm no stranger to white people. I'm from a mostly white town. Let me tell you one thing. You ought to know who you're dealing with. You got to treat them, white people, like shit, she says. That's the only way they'll respect you. She went on to equate white Americans to children and mocked politicians like Democrat Bernie Sanders who say, quote, white shit. I keep them right here, like under my thumb. That's where I keep it. Like, you have to. Otherwise, they get out of control like kids. So, for me, I know other people are tiptoeing around them white people. And I'm like, yo, that's some white shit. I ain't doing that. Okay. Criticizing Senator Sanders, she says, and that was my problem with Bernie. Because he was talking to an all-black crowd, he was afraid to say black shit. I said, if I'm talking to an all-black crowd, I'm saying black shit. Now, if you don't like it, get your ass up and leave. So, excuse the strong language on this one. But that's what she said, right? So this one spread like wildfire across social media. And then she doubled down. She says, basically, my mother raised me to be like that. Her mother was a failure then as well. And she's running, so she's a current congresswoman in South Carolina, but she's running for Senate, right? For the U.S. Senate against Tim Scott. And what's interesting about this one, not only is the inflammatory language and racist language, but specifically it's the fact that she's gotten condemnation from her own party. So again, going back to my comment at the opener of this, when the Democrats are fighting the Democrats and are upset with the Democrats, I mean, this tells me kind of two things. One, it's good to see that at least some Democrat has conscience, like an actual conscience, because given our polarized culture, to have even one of them with clear eyes to say this is bad, and we want to call it bad, that's progress. I'll take it. And then two is, look, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So when they are not in ranks with each other, when they're bickering and have inner squabbles, that's good. You want to see disunion. So anyway, you have a Democratic state representative, Justin Bamberg, publishing an op-ed calling Matthews' words toxic, right? If any of our white counterparts had said the same thing about black people, he says, then the minority community, including myself, would be up in arms, calling for that member's immediate resignation, Bamberg said. Almost sounding like a Republican there. That's a Republican talking point, right? And then you have Democratic, South Carolina Democratic gubernatorial, I can't say that, gubernatorial nominee Joe Cunningham telling the AP, look, there is absolutely no place for this in our political discourse. So that's a governor candidate. So I guess he won the Democratic nomination for governor, Joe Cunningham, and even he's like that's uncalled for. Crazy, right? And then it goes even further with the Democrats. So you have a South Carolina State Senate Democrat Party leader, Brad Hutto, calling for Matthews to drop out of the election, right? When candidates of either party start making irresponsible statements beyond what they're where they're from, what party they're from, they need to reevaluate their candidacy. That's what needs to happen here, he told the AP. Huge. So you have public outcry, check, and then you have your own party coming out against you, check. And like who knows what the bridge too far was? Maybe it's the fact that she came out against Bernie Sanders, right? And if you're gonna run for the Senate, it's probably not a good idea to criticize your colleague, your potential colleague, as you do that. It's probably not a good idea. I mean, I imagine you want endorsements, you will want to be able to build friendships and partnerships. But hey, maybe she's coming, maybe she's like the Senate version of the Squad, right? She's trying to be real, she's kind of younger, more progressive, more inflammatory. And if she manages to win, right, she can be the one who shakes stuff up in Senate, brings some of that spiciness to the Senate and kind of shakes shit up and just say whatever she wants to, just like the Squad does, right? As kind of their own little wing of the Democrat Party. So we'll see what happens here. Ultimately, it's one of those things where, once again, I hate saying this over and over, but Nancy Pelosi, what she said about you can put a D next to a glass of water in a Democratic district in New York, and folks are going to vote for it. She's staying in the race. She's not backing out as of this moment. She's staying in it. You can have the worst character. You can be absolute trash. You can be, toxic for everybody. And look, she's wearing blue. She is blue. She has the D beside her name. She just talks the talk, and her feelings are not that different from a lot of Democrats. And guess what? She has privilege, right? Both as a Democrat herself, as well as a black woman, right? To criticize her, that might make you a racist. That might make you a sexist. You don't want to be that, do you? So all these white men, right, who are criticizing her and her party and outside of her party, they better stand down, because she is the superior one. So she thinks, right? This is the new elitism. This is the new leftist privilege that's taken over society. And the reason I said she can't keep her mouth shut is because you may or may not recall, this is the same person who earlier in the year was caught on a recorded line talking to a prison inmate, basically like making illegal propositions. She was like, look, prison inmate, we need secret sleepers. We need secret sleepers. What does that mean? She seems to have three different perspectives on it. One is we need people to infiltrate the Republican Party, even though they're not Republicans. Okay. Right. We need us, our Democrats, our lefties, our liberals, our progressives, our communists, socialists, whatever they identify as. We need them to go on the other side, run and win, and then enact our policies. This is how we got rhinos. This is how we got Republicans in name only. It was through policies like this. So the Dems have been probably doing this for years now, right? And now it's only now that we're starting to catch on, and that we have some hard evidence that this is an actual strategy, right? And then she's saying other crazy stuff like, for example, hey, I'll gladly accept dope boy money, which is talking about drug money. You can just give us the money and put it in someone else's name, which is probably illegal, by the way. But hey, again, Democrat privilege, leftist privilege, they can do what they want, two-tier justice system. And she's like, hey, let's steal yard signs from our competition, right? Yeah, that's probably illegal too. But hey, let's do it. We got to win these what's the name? So I ask you, dear listener, like, who is threatening democracy right now? Who is threatening democracy? We have Democrats killing journalists, propagating illegal activity openly multiple times within a 3-month span, okay, and getting away with it and staying in office or staying in the race. No shame to her name, right? Putting out policies and then not living up to them. Who's the biggest threat to democracy right now? All right, so I'm moving this one to A tier. It's definitely a strong one, but I think that it's being suppressed sufficiently by the mainstream media that it hasn't quite taken that national conversation type of scenario yet. So we will stay tuned and see how things develop. Thanks for listening to today's rundown. If you liked what you heard, please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.